Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be comparing a Ford F-350 to a Chevy Silverado 3500, and we're going to decide if you should go with the Power Stroke or with the Duramax. Before we get in the video though, I do want to mention if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get right into it. Starting under the hood of the Silverado, we have the 6.6 liter Duramax diesel. It's a turbocharged V8 diesel that goes through a 10-speed automatic transmission. It's good for 445 horsepower and then 910 pound-feet of torque. And it's definitely a cool powertrain, super reliable as well. Popping over to the Ford, we have the 6.7 liter Power Stroke diesel, also goes through a 10-speed automatic transmission. It's good for 475 horsepower and then 1,050 pound-feet of torque. So the Ford definitely is quite a bit more powerful. Now, popping back over to the Silverado, this particular one is the High Country package, which is kind of like your top-of-the-line luxury package. Notice you have your Allison transmission Duramax badge there to flex on everyone that you've got the cool powertrain, and then the venting there at the center of the hood, which I think looks pretty cool. Notice there with the daytime running lights and then the headlights. I wasn't a fan of them initially, but now I think they look pretty cool. Got the High Country logo there below as well with the Chevy bow tie in the center. Look at all the chrome trim around there, and then notice kind of like the bronze trim as well as part of the High Country package. And yeah, I think it's a good looking truck from a front end perspective. Body painted bumpers, you got the tow hooks, you got the fog lights as well. So there's quite a bit going on, but right, it's all practical. Now popping over to the Ford, this one's in the Platinum package. Now this isn't the top of the line technically, but this has all of the luxury features you'd want in a pickup truck from Ford, frankly. Notice there with the front grille with the coloration, we've got the camera at the bottom of the Ford logo, and we have the gigantic LED daytime running lights with the headlights. It's kind of like a thing in the heavy-duty truck segment, is everything's just gigantic and in your face. Got the tow hooks there at the bottom, and then the air dam, which will help out with towing efficiency, right? Because it helps out with aerodynamic efficiency. Now popping back over to the Silverado, you guys can see we've got a pretty cool tire and wheel setup. We actually have relatively aggressive tires for, like, you know, on an off-road setting, and then you got the off-road tuned shocks as well, which is part of this particular package called the Z71 package that also gives you skid plates underneath so that you can make it to your campsite and you don't puncture anything, basically. Notice I got the 3500 HD badge there, cab lights there at the top, which I think actually look pretty nice in terms of the fit and finish, and then you got the trailer tow mirrors as well. And then here's your full side view on the truck. I think the stance on it's really nice. Kind of got that like squared off look with the, you know, fender flares and the fenders themselves. And then notice with the step there for the bed, and that's where you fill in the diesel and the DEF. And then you can see the gigantic leaf springs and then another one of the off-road shocks as well. And so this truck's, you know, all set up for towing everywhere pretty much. Now here's the tire and wheel setup with the Platinum. This one has more of like a street-based setup, basically, so you guys can see there. With the tires, sidewall is not too different actually with both the tires, just the tread pattern. And then here's a quick look at the front suspension with the truck, and then just standard shocks for the F-350. Got your Platinum logo there, 6.7 liter Power Stroke badge, and then again you got the big trailer tow mirrors. And then notice with the coloration on the door handles how that kind of matches the rest of the trim. And notice this one has the FX4 package, which, you know, typically will change quite a bit with the trucks, but with the Super Duties and the Platinum, it basically gives you an axle lock in the rear, which is no joke. We'll kind of talk about that in a moment. But notice here we've got the tailgate drop down there for the rear. Now let's talk payload and towing capacity. So like when you look at the max numbers with all of the truck brands, they're pretty crazy, but again, that's with like a very specific truck. With this type of truck that most people purchase, that's, you know, single rear wheel, not a dually, and it's got some like luxury features, so that kind of, you know, adds weight to the truck, which decreases the payload. You're usually around like that, close to that 4,000 pound range with a 3500 series truck. Both these trucks are pretty similar in terms of the payload. And then notice with the tailgate how that raises up. Towing capacity on the trucks again is also pretty similar with these setups that they have, which is kind of interesting because again, they all have like these crazy power figures that they throw out, but then they all end up towing about the same amount of weight and having about the same amount of payload, roughly. Now it's the exhaust tip that pokes out there, and then with the receiver hitch as well. And then you guys can see with the parking sensors, and yeah, again, I think the back end looks great. Now notice here with the key fob on the Ford, functionality is the same as what you have with the Silverado, which is pretty cool. No bed liner though. with the truck. It's weird. It's funny what I see with the different automakers. So like with Chevys, they almost like all have bed liners, and then with Fords, when I review them, they almost never have bed liners in them. But notice the LED bed lights there in the back, and then for the cargo tie downs, and you can see there with the cargo light and camera at the top. And then tailgate, just lift it up yourself. Not too heavy with Ford's bed step system. I do think that the back end of the Ford looks a little bit nice with the lights and then the platinum plaque. That's just personal preference. But notice practicality is the same with the parking sensors, receiver hitch down below, you know, all the normal tow truck stuff. And then, of course, the exhaust tip sticking out the side as well with the Ford. Now popping to the interior of the Silverado. Notice we've got some nice leather trim here on the door panel with some wood trim as well, which definitely kind of brings up the interior of the truck. And both these trucks haven't been, you know, fully redesigned in a little bit of time. Not too long for the Silverado, but a little bit longer for the Ford. The Ford's just had some refreshes over the last few years. But anyways, seats here in the High Country, you can see they look pretty nice with the two-tone design. And then notice down below with the vents and the charging ports and the cup holders, quite a bit of storage space there. And then obviously we got our armrest cup holder situation, which is always very important. Good space back there as well from a, you know, leg room and headroom perspective. Popping over to the Ford, got power side steps, pretty cool. Notice again with the door panel, nice material use. And then with the seats, I will say the Ford seats are more comfortable. Ford just does a better job with the padding and everything. I imagine Chevy might eventually change that in the future, but we'll see. And you can see it's pretty easy to get in with those power side steps. Solid room as well. And then notice with the cup holders, heated seats, got the charging ports, and then of course cup holder armrest, which is super important. Now popping back to the front of the Silverado, you can see again with that brown trim, I love the coloration here with the High Country. I think it looks great. And then we've got memory seats, you've got your window controls, mirror adjustments, you got the mirror extender, which is pretty cool. Helps out with being able to see around your trailer, right? Bose sound system, then you get your High Country logo. And then look at the front seats again with the High Country logo, and then that two-tone design there with the seat. Looks great. Again, power adjustments on the side, and then notice with the pedal layout down below. Got the parking brake right there, and then your light control. And then notice there with the fog light and the cargo light, your drive line select. You do have a four-wheel auto as well as a four-wheel high and a four-wheel low, which is pretty important to mention because, well, if I'm back over to the Ford, it doesn't happen to have a four-wheel auto, but we'll kind of talk about that more later. Notice there with the armrest again, with the leather trim, and then you can see with the mirrors, again, it does have the mirror extender, so that's pretty neat. All of your window controls, you got memory seats, and then you got the front seats, a little bit more comfortable with the platinum, like I said. You can kind of see when I touch the seat, just with the plushness, got the platinum logo, and then notice with the pedal layout, pretty normal, pedal adjustment, and then you can see up above, we got the lights for the mirrors and the regular lights. Steering wheel is power adjustable, and popping back into the Silverado, got a pretty cool startup here with the gauge cluster sweep. Obviously, it doesn't have the new gauge cluster from the half tons because they haven't refreshed this yet. But anyways, quick look at the steering wheel. Pretty nice material use. I like the coloration on the steering wheel too. I think that looks pretty good. And then you guys can see the controls there on the steering wheel as well. Heated steering wheel button. You got the cruise control. You got your regular stocks with the turn signal, windshield wiper stock. And then we have a column shifter, which frees up space, and it has the manual shift function for the 10-speed. Then popping here to the gauge cluster, it's half analog, half screen. And again, this is Chevy's older unit now, technically, because they've got the newer unit in the half tons. But notice you got the tow haul mode, and then you have a normal and an off-road mode with the truck. And again, with that Z71 package, that's why you're going to have that, because again, it's, you know, kind of like the off-road oriented version of the Silverado. Now, as for the infotainment system, not massive, but we've got a really good camera system. Shows all around the truck. It's a 360 camera view, and you guys can see all of the different viewpoints there with the truck. I think it's amazing. I mean, in terms of like the truck industry, it's the best camera system, and especially with Chevy's new infotainment system, the half ton, the camera view is just massive on the screen itself, and I think it is just absolutely perfect. But moving on from our fancy camera system to the rest of the infotainment system, response time's great, has Apple CarPlay, has Android Auto, got the little shortcut bar there at the bottom. It's pretty easy to use overall, and then you've got more shortcut buttons down below that, and then analog radio controls. Heated cooled seats, dual zone climate as well, and then notice that we've got like the little side step thing to move the side steps, which is kind of an interesting feature, but we got our hill descent control, you got that for the outlets, stability control, hazard lights, tailgate drop down and raise up, parking sensors, lane departure, and then the diesel exhaust brake to turn that on or off, trailer brake controls, and then all of our charging ports. And then notice with the stop start button, wireless phone charger. And then we've got the cup holders. And then you can see with the center console, got like the phone holder on the top. I like the material use. I think it looks great with the design on the center console. And then what you'll notice there is storage space is super solid. Got the USBs with the center console. And then notice the dual glove box situation as well. And you can see the padding there on the dash. Definitely gives it kind of a more premium feeling. Again, the two-tone design is pretty cool. Got the camera mirror, which is a nice bit of safety tech for the truck. And then just a regular sunroof with the truck as well. And then power sliding window, which is pretty standard on a luxury truck. At least we hope, right? But we'll see what happens in the future. And automakers always trying to nickel and dime us for everything, right? And then notice with the Ford's gauge cluster, pretty similar setup. So with the steering wheel, frankly, I don't think this steering wheel looks as nice on the Ford. Maybe it's just because there's not as much coloration happening, but it just looks a little bit older than what you have with the Silverado. And then notice column shifter, you got the drive mode select on that, and then also the manual shift function, just like the Silverado. And then the same thing with the gauge cluster, we've got half analog, half screen. Again, this is for Ford's older units. In the half tons, they have the newer unit, which I'm sure will be carried over to the heavy duties in the near future. But you guys can actually see the fuel economy because this truck is used with a little bit of mileage, whereas that Silverado is brand new. But I've reviewed some used 3500s, and I think the gas mileage is about the same with, well, I should say diesel mileage, right? But anyways, you can see all the controls there at the top, including like the diesel exhaust brake and the camera button and the hill descent control. And then also the 360 camera system with it. It's solid because it's on a big screen. It just doesn't have as many viewpoints as what the Silverado has from a camera perspective. I feel like they've just done a better job with the stitching together, but bigger infotainment system. Functionality is pretty much identical on the screen as what you have on the Silverado, where you've got a bunch of different functions you can go into. You have, you know, the functionality for like Apple CarPlay, for example. Massaging seats though, whereas the High Country doesn't have those, which is definitely a nice thing. And then notice there with that auxiliary screen off to the side. And then we have our driveline select with the 2-wheel high, 4-wheel low, axle lock, and then trailer brake controls. And then you've got your trailer backup assistance. And then notice there with the climate control, dual zone climate, heated cooled seats. Got some extra storage space. And if you guys are wondering on the Silverado why I didn't have an axle lock, it's because it's got the G80 system, which is just like its self-locking thing. Center console, nice material use. Again, it's weird. There's like pluses and minuses to both of them. The Ford parts of the Ford interior look more modern, but then parts look more dated. Like the dash and the center console don't look as modern as the Silverados. Panoramic sunroof though, got a bunch of auxiliary switches here, and then power sliding rear window, and then all of the controls there for the sunroof, and then universal garage door openers. But let's sum things up with this comparison. You know, Ford versus Chevy. So here's the deal. Yes, the Chevy is down on power and torque, and when you're towing a trailer, right, you will feel that to an extent because the Ford just accelerates at a quicker rate, but towing capacity is pretty close with both the trucks, and so is payload, so capability is very similar. And obviously, you know, the Duramax engine has such a strong name behind it, especially compared to the Power Stroke, right? The 7.3 Power Stroke, everyone loves that engine, but everything after that, people seem to not exactly like all that much. But aside from powertrains and capability, interiors with both of the trucks, here's the deal. I think the Silverado interior has some nice contrast with it compared to the Platinum. The Platinum has nicer seats. It's got massaging seats, bigger infotainment system that's frankly just slightly better. But camera system on the Silverado, like I said, is a little bit better. The Silverado interior overall feels a little bit more modern than the Ford's interior at this point, despite the fact that Ford has a bigger infotainment system. Both the trucks are showing their age, especially when you compare them to their half-ton counterparts. And so, yeah, it's definitely a tough choice. The way that I see it is the Silverado is probably going to be the better one to go for in today's market because Super Duty prices are through the roof because of availability issues with them right now, whereas you can still get the heavy-duty Silverados. And so, yeah, they still have pretty big price premiums on them, but not nearly as much as Ford. And so if we look at it from an affordability aspect, the Silverado just makes slightly more sense, at least in today's market. But again, there's pros and cons to both. Let me know which truck you would pick.